In the heart of a vast, magnificent alien palace, an 18-year-old princess stood before a gathering of her subjects, who revered her as the most powerful and intelligent of her kind. Her long, flowing blue hair shimmered like the stars, and her pointed ears gave her an ethereal look. She wore a stunning, intricate gown made of precious metals and fabrics, glistening in the warm golden light that poured through the grand windows of the palace. As the heir to the throne, she had seen many worlds, met many beings, and ruled over her people with pride and wisdom. She was known for her unmatched beauty, her commanding presence, and most importantly, her belief in the superiority of her species. Today, the palace was alive with anticipation. A human warrior, summoned to the palace for a diplomatic meeting, had arrived. The princess had heard stories of the humans from distant planets, strange creatures with short lifespans, weak bodies, and primitive technologies. To her, they were no different from any other lesser species who had fallen under her rule. She had always scoffed at the idea that a human could possess any form of greatness. After all, how could such a fragile species match the power of an ancient alien race? As the crowd parted to reveal the human, the princess couldn't help but notice the clunky metallic armor he wore. It was heavy and cumbersome, making the human seem awkward as he entered the room. His helmet obscured his face, but the armor itself was intimidating, with large shoulder plates, intricate engravings, and weapons attached to every side. To the princess, the armor was a symbol of weakness, a crutch for a species that lacked the inherent strength and grace of her people. A slight smile curled on her lips as she approached him, her gaze cold but piercing. She observed the human warrior carefully, trying to suppress the laughter bubbling inside her. It was almost comical to think that such an inferior creature could think himself worthy of standing in her presence. "You must be the human," the princess said, her voice smooth and condescending. "Tell me, what is it that you think you can do in that ridiculous armor? Surely, you know that no amount of metal will protect you from the true power of my people." The human's gaze remained fixed on her, but he did not speak. The room was eerily silent, every eye watching the interaction with bated breath. The princess raised an eyebrow, noticing the calmness in the human's demeanor. He wasn't intimidated, nor did he seem to care about her mocking words. As the princess continued to circle them, she felt a sense of superiority growing within her. She was the heir to the throne of a powerful empire, and this human was nothing but an insignificant visitor, another creature to show her power over. The princess sneered, her laughter finally escaping her lips. "Are you waiting for me to be impressed by your armor? How quaint," she said with a scoff. "Do you think your primitive technology can match the elegance and grace of my people? You are nothing more than a weak creature in a suit of metal." The human didn't respond to her jabs, and instead, he began to remove the heavy armor piece by piece. The room grew even more silent, the onlookers unsure of what to make of this strange act. The princess stared, her eyes narrowing. What was he doing? Why would a warrior remove his protection in front of her, especially after all the insults she had hurled at him? One by one, the pieces of the armor fell to the floor with a heavy clang, until the human stood before the princess, now wearing only a simple tunic that revealed his muscular build. He had the body of a warrior, toned, strong, and battle-worn. His face, still obscured by his helmet, revealed no sign of fear or hesitation. Instead, there was a quiet confidence in his stance. The princess blinked in surprise. For the first time, she felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, curiosity. Why would this human, who was supposedly weak, willingly remove his armor in front of her? He had already proven he was not intimidated by her insults, and now he was showing a bravery she hadn't expected from such a primitive species. The princess, trying to mask the unease creeping into her thoughts, took a step back. She had always prided herself on her ability to read others, to understand their weaknesses. But this human, he was proving to be a challenge. She could feel the tension in the air, and for the first time in a long while, She wondered if there was more to this human than she had given him credit for. The room, filled with the soft murmurs of the alien subjects, held its breath, waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. The princess studied the human in front of her, her mind racing. What was he thinking? What was he trying to prove by standing before her unprotected? With a sudden burst of confidence, the human finally removed his helmet, revealing his face to the princess and the room. His eyes locked with hers, filled with a quiet intensity. And for a moment, the princess felt something stir within her, a recognition, perhaps of strength she had never expected to find in a human. The room was thick with tension as the princess stood motionless, her eyes locked onto the human who now stood before her without armor. The weight of the moment seemed to stretch infinitely, with every pair of eyes in the room trained on the two of them. There was a strange, almost imperceptible shift in the air, as if the very walls of the palace had sensed the change in the dynamics between the alien princess and the human warrior. For the first time since their encounter, the princess could not predict what would happen next. The human's actions had completely unsettled her. He had not faltered in the face of her scorn or mockery. And now, with his armor discarded and his bare skin exposed, he stood in front of her with an unwavering sense of purpose. The room, usually filled with the whispers of servants and the clinking of royal artifacts, was eerily silent as everyone waited for the next move. The human's eyes, a striking shade of brown that shimmered with intensity, remained calm as they met the princess's gaze. He showed no signs of hesitation, no flicker of doubt or fear. His expression was steady, almost serene. This was not the nervous, trembling human she had imagined, a weak creature hiding behind layers of protection. No, this human was different. The princess, still trying to make sense of what was unfolding, couldn't help but feel the smallest prickling of uncertainty. She had always been the one in control, the one who commanded respect. Yet here stood this human, seemingly unbothered by her power and presence, exuding a quiet confidence that felt like an invisible force pushing back against her own. "You've seen my armor, and you've laughed," the human said, his voice low but clear, cutting through the silence of the room. "But armor is only a piece of protection, a layer that shields the body. True strength comes from something deeper, something that no metal can contain." The princess, stunned by his words, found herself momentarily speechless. The human's voice had a calmness that she had not expected, and as she listened to him speak, she could not deny the sincerity behind his words. There was no arrogance in his tone, only quiet confidence, as if he knew exactly who he was, and nothing in this room, not even her royal presence, could shake his certainty. "Strength," the human continued, stepping forward slowly, "isn't just about surviving battles. It's about facing the unknown, about standing up when everyone tells you to sit down. It's about trusting yourself, even when everything else seems uncertain." The princess took a deep breath, her thoughts racing. She had always believed in the superiority of her own kind, their advanced technology, their beauty, their physical prowess. But here was a human, standing before her without the protection of armor, speaking of a strength she had never considered. Her mind raced with questions. Could strength really come from within? Was this what she had been missing all along? Something beyond power, beyond skill? As if sensing her growing internal conflict, the human moved again, his body fluid and confident as he demonstrated his strength. He stood tall, his posture perfect as he performed a series of movements, his body twisting and turning with a grace that surprised the princess. He was agile, quick and precise. Every movement spoke of years of training, of discipline and control. The way he moved was fluid, not the stiff, clunky motions she had expected from someone in his position. The princess couldn't help but watch, her eyes widening slightly as she took in the human's display. She had expected him to be awkward, to stumble or fumble in his movements without the protection of his armor. But instead, he moved with the ease of a trained warrior, his movements sharp and calculated, each one flowing seamlessly into the next. For a moment, The princess forgot about her usual sense of superiority. Her gaze never left the human, mesmerized by the way he moved, the way his body seemed to defy the limits she had always believed were inherent in humans. The strength he displayed wasn't in his physicality alone, but in the way he carried himself, the quiet resolve in his posture, the calm in his eyes, the confidence that radiated from every fiber of his being. "You see," the human continued, his voice barely above a whisper now, "true power isn't in the armor or the weaponry. It's in the heart. It's in the courage to face what others fear, to step forward when others step back." The princess's mind spun. The words resonated with her more deeply than she could have anticipated. It wasn't just about physical strength. It was about inner resolve, about willpower, about never backing down no matter what challenges lay ahead. She had always thought of herself as strong. Her physical beauty, her intelligence, her alien heritage had made her feel untouchable. But now, she was beginning to question what true strength really was. The human stood before her now, chest heaving slightly with the exertion of his display, but his expression remained calm. He didn't look tired or out of breath. He simply looked at her, waiting for her response. His confidence was unwavering, as if he had no doubt that she would understand what he was trying to convey. The princess opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. What could she say to that? How could she, a ruler of an ancient and powerful race, argue with a truth that now seemed so clear? For the first time in her life, the princess found herself doubting her previous convictions. She had believed that strength came from power, physical and technological. She had believed that her superiority was undeniable. But the human's words and actions had planted a seed of doubt in her mind. Could it be that true strength didn't come from her advanced abilities, her beauty, or her intellect? Could it be that the strength the human spoke of, the courage to be vulnerable, to trust in oneself, was the strength that truly mattered? The room held its breath as the princess tried to process the realization unfolding within her. She had mocked the human for his armor, for his species' apparent weakness, but now she couldn't help but respect him. His quiet confidence had pierced through her arrogance, and in doing so, it had shattered a part of her belief system she had never questioned before. The tension in the air was palpable as the princess stood there, staring at the human, wondering if he truly understood the depth of what he had just shown her. And in that moment, for the first time, she wasn't sure if she was the one who had the upper hand. The princess stood motionless, her gaze still fixed on the human warrior. The earlier arrogance that had radiated from her seemed to have dissolved, leaving behind a quiet, unsettling emptiness. The grandeur of the palace, the marble floors, the golden tapestries, none of it seemed to matter anymore. It was as if the weight of his actions had crushed her sense of certainty. She had always believed that her people, with their advanced technology, unmatched beauty, and supreme intellect, were the apex of creation. But this human, this creature she had once deemed inferior, had made her question everything. The princess tried to shake off the unease that now clung to her thoughts. She was the ruler of a powerful alien empire, the one who had always held the upper hand. She had conquered planets, outsmarted rivals, and commanded the loyalty of entire fleets. Her people had ruled the galaxy for centuries, and in all that time, she had never encountered a species like this human. This fragile, seemingly insignificant being who had just stripped away his armor and stunned her into silence. She stepped back slightly, the movement slow and deliberate, but her eyes never left the human. The room was still, as if holding its breath, waiting for the next move. Her subjects, once eager to see her demonstrate her dominance, now stood in hushed anticipation. The princess felt their eyes on her, but for the first time, she could not feel the same overwhelming sense of power that she had always been so accustomed to. She had mocked him, ridiculed him for his armor and his species' primitive ways. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized how wrong she had been. The human had done something she had never expected, something that, deep down, she had feared. He had shown her a kind of strength she had never recognized before. It was not in his physical prowess, nor in his armor, but in his inner resolve, his unwavering belief in himself. His confidence had shattered her illusion of superiority, and it left her with a gnawing uncertainty that she couldn't ignore. The princess began to pace slowly, her mind racing as she tried to reconcile the powerful image of her people with the reality that the human had presented. She had always been taught that strength came from being better, being faster, smarter, and more capable than everyone else. But what if she had been wrong all along? What if the true measure of strength wasn't in the mind or the body, but in the heart? What if courage, humility, and determination were more powerful than any weapon or suit of armor? The princess's thoughts swirled in a storm of doubt. She thought of the many victories her people had achieved, the countless planets they had conquered, the technologies they had developed. She thought of her father, the great king, who had ruled with an iron fist, never showing weakness or vulnerability. He had always told her that their strength lay in their superiority. But now, looking at the human before her, she wondered if that was the real strength at all. The human, still standing tall before her, did not say a word. He simply watched her, his expression unchanged, his confidence unwavering. He seemed to understand that the moment had shifted, and now it was her turn to come to terms with the truth. His silence was not an insult, but a challenge to confront the very beliefs that had defined her existence. The princess paused in her pacing, her mind racing as she processed everything that had happened in the last few moments. For the first time in her life, she felt truly vulnerable. She had always prided herself on her intellect and strength, but now she realized that her confidence had been built on a fragile foundation. Her pride had blinded her to the true meaning of strength, and the human had shown her a different path. Her gaze flickered back to the human. She had always viewed him as a lesser being, weak, insignificant, and unworthy of her attention. But now she saw something more in him. His courage, his strength of character, had pierced through her armor of arrogance and revealed a part of her that she had long ignored. She had always prided herself on her ability to see through others, to understand their weaknesses and exploit them. But in this moment, she realized that it was she who had been blind. The princess took a slow, measured breath, trying to steady her thoughts. She had always believed that her power came from her status, her lineage, and her intellect. But now, she wasn't so sure. The human had stripped away the illusion of invincibility she had built around herself, leaving her with a newfound understanding of what true strength was, and it terrified her. Her thoughts began to shift, and she realized that the human had done something no one else had ever managed to do. He had made her question herself. In that moment, the princess understood that true strength was not about being perfect, about having the superior intellect or the most advanced technology. It was about facing one's own weaknesses, accepting vulnerability, and still standing strong in the face of doubt. It was about courage in the face of uncertainty, and the willingness to evolve. As the princess stood there, her mind still spinning, she couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. Would she continue to cling to the beliefs that had shaped her entire life? Or would she take a step forward into the unknown, embracing the lesson the human had given her? The room, once filled with the princess's dominance and poise, now seemed quieter, as if even the walls were waiting for her decision. The human's quiet confidence had shattered her carefully constructed facade, and she found herself standing on the edge of something she had never before considered. The possibility that strength, true strength, came from within. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized that the answer might lie not in her royal bloodline, but in the very essence of what made her human, just as it was for the warrior standing before her. For the first time, the princess felt herself wavering. The room fell into a heavy silence as the princess stood before the human, her mind swirling in a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts. The golden walls of the palace, which had once symbolized her unchallenged authority, now seemed distant and irrelevant. The grand chandeliers, which glittered in the light, seemed to fade into the background, overshadowed by the weight of the realization crashing down on her. The human stood before her, still calm, his expression steady, his confidence unshaken by the moment. The princess, who had once seen herself as the most powerful being in the room, now found herself questioning her entire existence. Her heart raced as she grappled with the magnitude of what had just happened. The human had done something that no one, no alien, no ruler, had ever managed to do. He had forced her to confront her own weaknesses, her own misconceptions. She had always believed that strength came from power. Power over others, power in intellect, power in superiority. But now, as she stood there in front of him, she realized that true strength was not in domination, but in the courage to face one's fears and weaknesses head-on. The princess, though still standing tall, felt the shift inside her. Her previous arrogance, the smug belief that her species was the greatest in the universe, began to crumble. What had once been the foundation of her identity, the idea that her strength lay in her superiority, was now a lie she could no longer hold on to. The human had, in a matter of moments, shattered that illusion. He wasn't the weak, helpless creature she had initially assumed. No, he was something more. The human had shown her that strength wasn't just about physical power. It wasn't about intellect or advanced technology. It was about heart. It was about resilience. It was about having the courage to stand in the face of everything that tried to break you and still keep moving forward. And in that moment, the princess knew that the human had something her people had never fully understood. She took a slow step forward, her gaze never leaving him. His eyes met hers, and there was something in his expression, a quiet understanding, an unspoken connection, that made her heart skip a beat. The princess realized that in this human, she was seeing a reflection of the very strength she had overlooked for so long. He had nothing but his courage and will, yet that was all he needed. The armor he had removed was not just a physical barrier. It was a metaphor, a symbol of everything that she had clung to for so long. The princess's voice, usually so commanding, now seemed softer, almost hesitant. "I have always believed that our power is what defines us," she began, her words carefully chosen. "That strength lies in the superiority of our species, in our intellect and our technology. But now, I see that I have been wrong." She paused, the words feeling foreign as they left her lips. It was a difficult thing to admit, to accept that everything she had believed in, everything she had been taught, was now in question. The pride she had taken in her heritage, the superiority she had once felt, was now something she saw as a limitation. The human didn't say anything in response, but his steady gaze spoke volumes. There was no smugness in his eyes. "No, I'd told you so." There was simply understanding, and perhaps even a touch of respect. "I had thought we were the strongest because of our technology, our control over the galaxies, our advanced minds," the princess continued, her voice steady but filled with humility. "But you have shown me that true strength comes from within. An unbreakable will, a heart that refuses to yield. I see now that strength is not in dominance, but in resilience. It is not in superiority, but in the courage to face challenges without fear." Her words hung in the air, and for a long moment, the human said nothing. But the princess saw a small shift in his expression, his lips curling slightly in a soft, approving smile. That smile was enough to confirm what she had already realized. In that simple gesture, she understood that the human knew exactly what he had done. He had shown her the true meaning of strength, not through force or superiority, but through the courage to stand as oneself, unprotected and unafraid. The princess took another step forward, this time standing directly before the human, her eyes filled with something she had never felt before: respect. It was something she had never thought she would offer to a human. But in that moment, it came naturally. She had always prided herself on being in control, but now, for the first time, she acknowledged that there were things beyond her control, beyond her understanding. The human had given her a gift, a lesson that would forever change the way she viewed not only him, but her own people as well. "You have earned my respect," the princess said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. "You have shown me what true strength is." For the first time since their encounter, the human spoke, his voice gentle but resolute. "Thank you, princess. Strength is not something given or taken. It is something you find within yourself, even when everything around you tells you to give up." The princess nodded slowly, the weight of his words sinking in. She had come into this room believing that she was the superior being, that she held all the answers. But now, as she stood there with the human, she realized that there was still so much more for her to learn, so much more to understand. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly humbled. As the silence stretched on, the princess made a decision. She would return to her people, but she would carry this lesson with her. She would teach them that strength is not in domination, but in the courage to face the unknown with an open heart. She would make sure that the human's wisdom would not be forgotten. And with that, the princess gave the human a final look, one filled with respect, admiration, and perhaps a bit of gratitude. She had never expected to learn from a human, but in doing so, she had unlocked a new understanding of what it meant to truly be powerful. And in that realization, the princess found a new sense of purpose, one that would change her destiny forever.